Our SEC Week 3 winners and losers, who impressed and who depressed. Some big winners at Georgia and A&M. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Cordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. All right, let's dive into it. We always do this Monday reaction show. Coming off of SEC Week 3, we're going to get to our losers of the weekend in a bit. But let's start on a positive note. Let's start with our winners. And we start off first over at Georgia as Gunner Stockton, the junior quarterback for Georgia, outstanding on Saturday in his first true career road SEC start. And a hostile environment there in Knoxville. He would go 23 of 31 for 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He would also have 38 rushing yards with a rushing score. Game 4 of the Gunner Stockton era there for Georgia was a massive success. Obviously, they balance it out with that power rush attack, and the Bulldogs win it 44-41 in overtime for a huge road victory, the 9th straight win over the Vols. Stockton's teammates calling him after the game a dog, quote unquote. And now the Bulldogs, they get to rest a week before they host Alabama on September 27th. Georgia sitting in the driver's seat atop the SEC. When you look at what they have remaining, for their toughest remaining games at home, their only remaining ranked road opponent will be at Auburn on October 11th. So still a lot of season to go, but Georgia's sitting in a pretty good spot. A monster win where it looked like late in that game, it looked like it was going to be Tennessee's game. And somehow, some way, Georgia prevails and comes away with it. Gutty performance by their defense down the stretch, but particularly Gunner Stockton, a beautiful throw he threw into the end zone late in the game. Just a great performance overall for him. How about another winner of the weekend? And this is on a losing performance, but I got to put Chris Brazzell in here. The Tennessee deep threat finished with 6 catches for 177 yards and 3 touchdowns. And like I said, while it was in a losing effort, Brazzell had his best game in a Tennessee uniform. And this was after a 125-yard performance last week. He got 364 yards and 5 touchdowns on the season already. It's the second most yards in the SEC this season. He is set to have a monster year. So shout out Chris Brazzell, former guest here on Locked On SEC. Another winner of the weekend, I'm putting Marcel Reed with Mario Craver in here. Monster performances for them in their 41-40 road win at Notre Dame on Saturday night. Craver, the Mississippi State transfer, leads the SEC in receiving. He had a 7-catch, 207-yard performance with a touchdown in this one, while Marcel Reed threw for 360 yards, rushed for 37, threw the go-ahead touchdown in the final minute for the massive road win for A&M to get them to a perfect 3-0. Now the Aggies get a bye week before Auburn comes to town on September 27th. A huge win for Mike Elko. That defense still giving up a little bit too many points for my liking, but it doesn't seem to matter because their offense has been so good. OC Colin Klein doing a heck of a job using all of his weapons. Le'Veon Moss had 3 rushing touchdowns in this one. Casey Concepcion, he had 82 receiving yards. That balance of him and Craver have just been outstanding. And if you weren't taking the Aggies seriously yet, you need to. Another winner of the weekend. How about LSU's defense? 5 interceptions for the LSU defense against quarterback DJ Lagway. 2 picks for Deshaun Spears, one of those being a return for a touchdown, so a pick 6 for him. A.J. Halsey, Tamarcus Cooley, DJ Pickett. What's most amazing is 3 of those 4 guys weren't even on LSU's roster a few months ago. They crushed it in the portal. Strong recruiting class. DJ Pickett, the leader of that. They also had 3 sacks defensively. Blake Baker, he has got this LSU defense looking like defenses of old in Baton Rouge. They've given up just 27 total points on the season. That's the fewest points LSU has given up through 3 weeks since 2014. And 6 interceptions already for LSU this season. They had 6 all of last year. So just to tell you how different this defense is, they are 11th in the country in points allowed per game, 2nd in the SEC behind Oklahoma. need the offense to catch up. And Brian Kelly obviously had some choice words for the media after the game, asking what's wrong with the offense. And he's going, guys, we're 3-0 and our defense is awesome. Maybe this is just how this team is built. We'll see. But LSU is going to have to get that offense back going. And they maybe will with all those weapons they have, Garrett Nussmeier and others. But you can't not be impressed with this defense. Somewhere Jaden Daniels is sitting in the Commanders' locker room going, where the hell was this defense when I was the quarterback and I was winning the Heisman Trophy? All right, another winner of the weekend. How about Clark Lee? This ain't your daddy's Vanderbilt as they cruise to a 31-7 road win over South Carolina to improve to 3-0. The Commodores dominated every facet of the game, forced 4 turnovers, and they are 3-0 for the first time since 2017. Most importantly, they snapped a 16-game losing streak to the Gamecocks. Clark Lee dedicating the win to Bobby Johnson, his mentor, and the last Vandy coach to beat South Carolina back in 2008. Of course, South Carolina quarterback Lenore Sellers knocked out of the game in the second quarter after taking a helmet-to-helmet hit from Vandy linebacker Langston Patterson. He was ejected for targeting, and Sellers did not return. And the Commodores, they just dominated the line of scrimmage. They held nearly a 12-minute edge in time of possession. And this team just looks much improved on offense, than recent Vandy teams. And they're solid, they're balanced, they're run and pass, and their defense pretty salty too. They were able to get consistent pressure, just rushing 4. And was listening to a national radio show yesterday, and I heard Clark Lee's name being thrown around as one of the potential hot names that could be up for some big jobs this offseason. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, using Vandy as a punchline, those days are over. They get home games coming up next against Georgia State and Utah State the next 2 weeks. So if they take care of business, which they should, they will be a perfect 5-0 heading to Tuscaloosa on October 4th. And I know some Bama fans still having nightmares about that game a year ago. Could be a fun one. Another win of the weekend, I've got John Mateer, the Oklahoma quarterback. He continues to impress as they went on the road and beat the snot out of Temple 42-3 on Saturday. Mateer threw for 282, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, also rushed for 63 yards and a rushing score. Continues to develop that chemistry with his passing weapons like Isaiah Satania and Jaron Kanek and Mateer. He leads the SEC in passing yards, just under 1,000 yards already. And he actually ranks 19th in the SEC in rushing yards. His 4 rushing touchdowns is tied for 4th most among SEC rushers. He leads the nation with at least 1 rushing and 1 passing touchdown in 9 straight games. So that goes back to his time at Washington State last year. A monster home game against Auburn looms this weekend as John Mateer continues to build up a potential Heisman resume. And shout out to that Sooner defense as well. They have been super stifling so far this season, one of the best in the country. Another winner of the weekend, Trinidad Chambliss. If you did not know his name, the Ole Miss backup quarterback was at Ferris State just a year ago, but his number would be called on Saturday night as starter Austin Simmons was still banged up. Chambliss would go on to throw for a touchdown and rush for 2 more. And what was a surprise start to many, he would go 21 for 29 for 353 yards as Ole Miss beat Arkansas in a wild game, 41-35 in Oxford. Lane Kiffin saying after the game, great job by Trinidad. Great job by our coaches getting him ready. Trinidad really took care of the football, got out of trouble all night, only took 1 sack. And Chambliss became the latest hero to emerge in a series trademarked by close games, overtime heroics, bizarre plays between the Rebels and the Razorbacks. Ole Miss finished 7 for 7 in the red zone, and the teams combined for 59 points, 634 yards of offense. Neither team had a turnover, just a crazy game. But Ole Miss remains undefeated. They will host Tulane this Saturday. That's a big one. Tulane's been on a roll. And as far as non-conference games go, that's a big, big one there in Oxford. By the way, they get LSU coming to town the week after. So a couple of big ones here for Ole Miss coming up. Another winner of the weekend, Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback. Remember I told you guys after that loss to FSU in week 1, I said, don't freak out. Ty Simpson's going to settle in. He's going to get back to Tuscaloosa, and he's going to be just fine. Well, he continues to build up his confidence with another dominant home win as he goes 24 for 29, 382 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, as Alabama crushes Wisconsin 38-14. He was just as solid last week against Louisiana Monroe, and he joins Mac Jones as the only quarterbacks in school history to complete at least 80% of their passes and throw 3 touchdowns in consecutive games. Kalen DeBoer saying he's in the last 2 games, the game has slowed down for him. It isn't a question of talent. He's risen to the occasion. We challenged him a little bit last week, and we like where he's at. By the way, Ryan Williams, he has 5 catches for 165 yards. He's doing just fine. But overall, Alabama, they have scored on 17 of their last 20 possessions, including 15 touchdowns, and the Crimson Tide have outscored their last 2 opponents by a combined score of 111 to 14. Potentially, they're turning the corner. They got all the disrespect, and rightfully so, after that week 1 loss to Florida State, but they look like a different ball club these last 2 weeks. They look like the Bama team we thought they would be preseason, honestly. Another winner of the weekend, how about Ahmad Hardy, the Mizzou running back, rushing for 250 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns in Mizzou's 52-10 win over ULL. This is one of the guys I talked about all offseason. I was excited to see, and he's doing exactly what I thought he would. Leads the SEC in rushing currently. He's second in the nation in rush yards behind UTSA's Robert Henry. Hardy saying after the game, every time I touch the ball, I'm thinking I'm going to score. So I was just trying to get in the end zone. Mizzou will kick off SEC play this week, hosting number 11 South Carolina. So going to be a fun one there. Another winner of the weekend, Jeremiah Cobb, the Auburn running back. He rushed for 119 yards and a touchdown in the absence of Damari Alston. He has a career-high 4 rushing touchdowns through 3 games this year. Kind of a sleepy 31-15 win for Auburn over South Alabama. Jackson Arnold, he threw for a touchdown and rushed for 2 more. At Auburn, ranked for the first time since 2021, they are playing their best football in years, but they're going to see a big step up in competition as they take on 4 consecutive ranked teams. They will open SEC play this Saturday at Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold taking on his former team. Another winner of the weekend, the Mississippi State rush attack. You probably didn't pay attention, but the Bulldogs rushed for almost 300 yards on Alcorn State in a 63-0 win to improve to 3-0. Fluff Bothwell, he carried the load with 93 yards and 2 rushing scores. And the Bulldogs, 3-0 for the first time since 2018, with their first shutout since 2017 by their defense. 9 different players scored a touchdown for Mississippi State. They will host Northern Illinois this week for a chance to go to 4-0 before Tennessee comes to town to open SEC play for them. And our last win of the weekend, I'm putting Cutter Boley in here. The Kentucky quarterback threw for 240 yards, 2 touchdowns as Kentucky rolled past Eastern Michigan 48-23. Boley was filling in for the injured Zach Calzada, who has some Wildcat fans now calling for Boley to be the guy moving forward. Boley saying after the game, I prepare every week as if I'm the starter and just maxed out my preparation, make sure I'm as comfortable as I can be when I get in there. Mark Stoops saying, I thought he did a really good job for his second start. I thought his awareness was pretty good, did a good job of managing the game. Kentucky will have a bye week this week before traveling to South Carolina on September 27th. So we'll see what happens there at the Kentucky quarterback spot. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We gave you our winners. Coming up next, we'll give you our losers of the weekend. Hey, but first, a quick question for all of you college football fans out there. If you go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? For us, it would be a hat from the game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles you wore back in the 80s and 90s, and now they are going for the same price they did back then when you use our code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, all caps. You will get your vintage hat for just $16.99. Incredible price. I've already ordered a couple. We've got a couple back here staring at you. If you're watching on video, all you got to do is head to thegamecaps.com, TheGameCaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use our code Locked On for that exclusive discount because legends wear the game. This episode also brought to you by friends at 5-Hour Energy. And look, caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 calories. And what we love most is how portable they are. Big taste in a tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Again, 5-Hour Energy, get them all over town. Easy to grab, easy to get that dose that you need. Reach for that 5-Hour Energy shot. Again, easy to slide right into your pocket or throw in the car. They're fat, make you feel fast to take effect, we should say, and they are sugar-free. Honestly, you're going to love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so you don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots. Get to favorites you love, or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. All right, rolling along here, Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We did our winners of the weekend. Now we got to get to our losers of the weekend. And we got to start over at Florida as DJ Lagway throws 5 interceptions on Saturday night, his first road SEC start. It was a rough one. And look, it was in Death Valley, so maybe nothing to be ashamed of at LSU. Billy Napier saying after the game, it's a young player that he's got to learn from his experiences. DJ Lagway becoming the first Florida quarterback to throw 5 picks in a single game since Shane Matthews in 1992. 5 touchdowns and 6 picks on the season with 82 passes thrown over the last 2 weeks for a guy who obviously didn't throw that many balls in 7 months. Remember, he had the shoulder issue throughout the spring, and they were kind of monitoring that, and he's not really progressed like a lot of people thought he would, and garnered a lot of offseason conversation, and some people saying it looks like he may have even regressed. So DJ Lagway, not the greatest start to the season. Another loser of the weekend, we're putting Billy Napier in here. Napier still calling the plays, will not bring in somebody else, or didn't bring in anybody else this offseason to take over play calling duties, didn't defer to anybody else on staff. And look, I thought his play calling in the first half against LSU looked pretty good, but he kept going to the screen game, and well, LSU figured that out. In the second half, they couldn't run the ball, even though, Jaden Ball, who was looking pretty good, was carrying close to 5 yards a carry at one point. But Florida's schedule the rest of the way, it is absolutely brutal. They're at Miami this week. They're home for Texas, and then at Texas A&M, all top 10 teams. Then they have that game against top 5 Georgia later in the year. And to finish off the season, they are at number 13 Ole Miss, home versus number 15 Tennessee, and home versus number 7 Florida State. Even if they beat Mississippi State and Kentucky, which you would say are probably their 2 most winnable games, they will need to pull off 3 massive upsets just to become bowl eligible. I just do not see how Billy Napier survives this season at this point. Another loser of the weekend, hate to do it to the kid, but Max Gilbert, the Tennessee kicker, had a chance to give Tennessee a walk-off win against Georgia, but a 43-yard field goal attempt goes wide right just before the final whistle. We go on to overtime. He did make a 42-yarder to give Tennessee a lead, but Georgia would punch it in for the game-winning touchdown. Obviously not all on Max Gilbert, but it was a heck of a time for him to miss his first field goal of the season. He was 20 for 26 last season, and he was having a nice year this season, but a rough moment that could have given the Vols a massive win. And Josh Heupel saying after the game, it's a series of one play that makes a specialist. Sometimes your life gets showcased in a way where you get limited opportunities. That's the life of being a kicker. Of course, Tennessee had a false start penalty right before they went to kick the field goal, so that backed them up a little bit. Just hate to see it, but Max Gilbert, got to wear it for a little bit. Another loser of the weekend, I'm putting Arch Manning in here. Arch in Texas, they beat UTEP 27-10 on Saturday. The Longhorns, they were a 40-point favorite, but Manning just 11 for 25 for 114 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He did rush for 51 with 2 rushing scores. I've seen a lot of Texas fans wondering, why does it look like Arch is perhaps regressed from that sample size we saw a year ago? Remember, he looked great last year, airing it out against UTSA, Louisiana Monroe, and Mississippi State when he stepped in for the injured Quinn Ewers. He was finding his targets down the field. Accuracy didn't seem to be an issue in that limited starting time last year. But in this one, he had 10 straight incompletions at one point, through an interception in the end zone, and the crowd booed him heading to the locker room at halftime. That was a pretty big surprise. Was one of the preseason favorites for the Heisman. And yes, this is the first time he was a full-fledged starting quarterback, but someone brought up he's been in the system for 3 years now with Sark. It's not exactly like he's some high school kid that just got on campus. Arch saying after the game, I've got to play better. I'm just frustrated. I know I'm better than this. It's going to be hard to sleep tonight. Sark saying, I feel like he pressed some, knew he missed some throws. I feel like we've done enough with him to have a pretty good understanding of who he is as a player and what he's capable of. I know there's a lot of football in him that's high-level football. And some are even saying, is this a mental block for Arch? Arch saying after the game, all my life I've been an accurate passer. I just got to get back to it. So, look, plenty of time to still figure this out and get the wrongs righted for Arch Manning, but he's taking some heat right now because of how he's played thus far this season. By the way, Texas defense, once again, going to be a strength for the Longhorns. They have surrendered just 4 touchdowns this season. Need to watch the running backs, though, for Texas. Their depth going to be tested. Starting tailback Trey Wisner missed his second game with a leg injury, and then C.J. Baxter left Saturday's game after a hamstring injury on the first play. With them out, James Simon and Jared Gibson rushed for 131 yards. They will host Sam Houston State this week before they get a bye week and then a road trip to the Swamp. So still plenty of time here in these next 2 weeks to retool things for Texas. Another loser of the weekend, I'm putting South Carolina offense and defense. I know all the wind was taken out of their sails after Lenore Sellers was knocked out of the game, but a team where defense was a strength last year, the Gamecock defense gave up 323 yards of offense to Vandy. Vandy was 50% on third downs. They struggled to get after Pavia, just one sack on the night. And the reality is the offense, they just plummeted with Luke Doty. When Luke Doty took over, he threw a pick. Sellers had thrown a pick. Gamecocks rushed for 86 net yards as a team on the night. And it was just a whole lot of bad in a 31-7 blowout loss. Shane Beamer saying after the game, it's way too soon to know if Luke Doty will start this Saturday against Mizzou. And it was Carolina's worst loss since that 27-3 loss to Ole Miss early last season. They just have not had many blowout losses at home under Shane Beamer, but this one certainly was. And they're going to need to get Lenore Sellers back as soon as they can if they have any hope of still rallying and making the college football playoff, but just an ugly loss for the Gamecocks. Another loser of the weekend, I'm putting the Arkansas defense in here. As much as we bragged on Talon Green and the Arkansas offense this season, it was their defense that was just ugly on Saturday. The Razorbacks gave up 475 yards of offense to the Rebels, who had their backup quarterback starting. Ole Miss was 8 for 12 on third downs. They did not force a turnover. I know Lane Kiffin is a great offensive mind, but I just thought when I heard that, Trinidad Chambliss is starting at quarterback for Ole Miss, I thought Arkansas would have a great chance to pull off the road win. But while their offense was great, their defense could not get a stop when they needed one. Defense coordinator Travis Williams is going to need to go back to the drawing board to figure out some better schemes moving forward. Razorbacks did miss 2 big field goals as well. And, Ole Miss ended up sealing the game with just under 2 minutes left. TJ Daughtery stripped the ball from Jalen Brown, and Wyatt Williams recovered. Arkansas coming up next will visit unbeaten Memphis on Saturday before they get Notre Dame. So 2 big non-conference games for Arkansas coming up. And our last loser of the weekend, I put the Alabama run game in here. I know they're missing Jam Miller, but Bama has to figure out how to run the football. I know the offense has been great because they've been flinging it around the field, but the team rushed 22 times for a net of 72 rushing yards on Saturday against Wisconsin. They rushed for 212 against Louisiana Monroe last week. But remember, they had just 87 rush yards week 1 against Florida State. With the bye week this week, then on the road at Georgia, if they cannot run the ball effectively against Georgia, it's going to be tough to pull off that victory. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We'll get to rankings when we return. Hey, first, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way for you to get in on the action. All you do is pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player projections, and you could turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. If you haven't been playing Prize Picks lately, it is a fun way to stay locked in throughout the football season. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it'll probably be your favorite way to follow along with the football games. And the best part, even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you could still go back and double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use our code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. It is Prize Picks, and it's good to be right. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And, of course, the NFL season is here. And FanDuel, they are making sure you are ready for kickoff each and every week with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers, if you've never used FanDuel before, you can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel. It fits however you want to bet, from player props, same-game parlays. Heck, you want to jump into a game that's already started, you can do that. Jump in live as the action unfolds. It's going to make every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or you keep an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sunday. So if you're ready to play, download FanDuel today, download the app, or visit FanDuel.com to get signed up and get started. That is FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet and you'll be off and running. All right, final segment here on Locked On SEC, and we got to dive back into it because we've got some poll action. Let's take a look at the Week 4 coaches poll. We have got 11 SEC teams ranked in here. Not a ton of change from last week up top. Georgia at number 3, LSU at number 4, Texas at number 7. So 3 SEC teams in the top 10, or rather Texas A&M sneaking up there at number 10. So 4 teams in the top 10. So A&M at 10, Ole Miss at 11, Oklahoma at 12. Then you got Alabama at number 14, Tennessee at number 15. And then right on the back end of the coaches poll, you got Mizzou at 22, Vandy jumping in the top 25 at number 23. They've got South Carolina still hanging in there at 24 and Auburn at 25. The coaches poll actually has 12. So the AP poll, they have got LSU at 3. They got Georgia 1 slot lower at number 5. They got Texas 1 slot lower at number 8. Texas A&M at 10. Oklahoma at 11. They're a little bit higher on Iowa State there at 12. But Ole Miss 13, Alabama 14, Tennessee 15. And then on the backstretch, you got Vanderbilt all the way up at 20 in the AP poll. Auburn at 22 and Mizzou at 23. It's a fortuitous time for Auburn to jump in there into the top 25 because they got that big matchup against Oklahoma coming up this weekend. So good to see Auburn ranked again. Good to see Vanderbilt ranked. I had somebody text me last week saying, why isn't Vanderbilt ranked? They should be ranked. Well, they are. So that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. And hey, it is another big moment on Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present the college football kickoff show with former AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson. A college football preview only Locked On can bring you. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday night throughout the season, only on Fire TV. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Come on back and see us tomorrow. We got some great interviews throughout this whole week right here on Locked On SEC.